Imagine you had a groundbreaking technology, one with the potential to generate trillions of dollars in profits. But there's a catch. This technology might also come with serious health risks, ones that could spark widespread outrage and lawsuits if the public ever caught on. So how do you protect your profit machine? Simple. You craft a system that silences dissent, shields you from accountability, and places the financial burden of health risks on the American people. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's exactly what happened in 1996 with the Telecommunications Act and the creation of the FCC's thermal-only safety guidelines. Let's walk through how such a system was created and how it continues to harm us today. Step 1. Influence policy at the highest levels. To protect your trillion-dollar industry, you'd need to influence policymakers. Enter the revolving door of Wall Street elites, corporate lobbyists, like Wall Street elite pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who visited the White House over a dozen times when this unconstitutional law was signed by Bill Clinton during the 1990s, underscoring the deep ties between government and shady corporate influence when Section 704 was signed into law. During this time, the wireless industry worked behind the scenes to push legislation that would eliminate public resistance to its infrastructure rollout. Their weapon of choice? Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Step 2. Silence communities with an unconstitutional law. Section 704 is one of the most damaging laws in modern history. Here's what it did. Gagged local governments. It forbids communities from citing health or environmental concerns when challenging the placement of cell towers. Yes, even if you have scientific proof of harm, you are legally barred from mentioning it. Violated the Constitution. By stripping Americans of their First Amendment right to petition the government and their 10th Amendment right to local governance, Section 704 ensured that corporate profits would take precedence over public health. Guaranteed expansion. With no legal barriers in their way, the wireless industry was free to flood neighborhoods with towers, regardless of proximity to schools, playgrounds, or homes. Step 3. Establish fake safety standards. Knowing that questions about health risks would eventually arise, the industry needed a way to deflect responsibility. In the same year Section 704 was passed, the FCC adopted thermal-only radiation guidelines, which claimed that if radiation doesn't heat tissue, it must be safe. But here's the problem. Decades of science show that non-thermal radiation can cause serious biological harm, including DNA damage, oxidative stress, neurological disruption, and hormonal imbalances. These guidelines weren't based on medical research. They were written by telecom engineers whose primary concern was expanding the wireless infrastructure, not protecting public health. Step 4. Externalize the costs onto the public. By silencing health concerns and creating fake safety standards, the wireless industry was able to shift the burden of health risks onto you and your family. Here's how this played out over the past 30 years. Unchecked radiation exposure. Schools, homes, and neighborhoods across America were blanketed with RF radiation from cell towers and devices. The public was assured it was safe despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Rising health issues. The past few decades have seen a surge in neurological disorders, developmental delays, and chronic illnesses, conditions linked to RF radiation in countless studies, blocked innovation for safer tech. With no legal pressure to address health risks, the industry has had no incentive to develop safer technologies, leaving Americans exposed to outdated, dangerous infrastructure. The human cost. A story too familiar. Take John Coates, founder of RF Safe, whose fight against these laws is deeply personal. After losing his firstborn daughter to a birth defect linked to EMF exposure, he devoted his life to protecting others from similar harm. Today, his 7-year-old daughter sits in a classroom just 465 feet from a cell tower, a distance well below independent scientists' recommendations. Yet, thanks to Section 704, John cannot even bring up health concerns in court to protect his child. This isn't just a policy issue. It's a betrayal of our constitutional rights and our duty to protect future generations. The call to action. dismantling the RF hoax. It's time to wake up to what's happening. The unconstitutional law and fake guidelines created in 1996 aren't just historical footnotes. They're actively harming us today. Here's how we fight back. Repeal Section 704. Demand the restoration of local governments' rights to regulate wireless infrastructure based on health concerns. Update safety standards. Push for evidence-based FCC guidelines that account for non-thermal effects and real-world exposure. Enforce Public Law 90-602. This 1968 law requires ongoing research into radiation hazards and modern safety updates. It's time to hold federal agencies accountable. Raise awareness, share this story. Educate your community about the hidden dangers of RF radiation and the laws that protect corporate interests over public health. Conclusion: protecting the next generation. If you wanted to make trillions of dollars while externalizing the risks, you'd do exactly what the wireless industry did in 1996. You'd gag communities, create fake safety standards, and leave the public to bear the health consequences, all while profiting endlessly. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Section 704 and the FCC's outdated guidelines can be dismantled, and they must be. For our children, for our health, and for the future of technology, we need to act. The fight starts with you. Join the movement. Share this message. Demand change. #Trump Repeal 704. It's time to reclaim our rights, restore scientific integrity, and protect America's future.